hopefully I'm now. Sorry for still having a not better voice than before, but hopefully I will survive it with a fantastic panelist. How was it to hear it, what the industry was saying? I think the message was quite clear. You know, just certain words, buzzwords have been mentioning many times. But as we last time started with the overall EU perspective, and Viktoriya, super happy to see you once again here, how is Europe in your perspective? Because you are like every day there looking how the offshore is going. Are we serious in Europe in offshore, or we are actually having a crisis?
We are very serious about offshore wind in Europe, especially this year. I don't want to neglect the fact that the previous panel mentioned this, and I fully agree. We had a few turbulent years in the offshore wind sector in Europe, and that was mostly due, on the one side, because of the crisis that we lived in 2022, which has impacted, of course, the business case for how we develop offshore wind in Europe. And then, of course, because we have not seen the right and stable regulatory frameworks across many major markets for offshore wind, which has inevitably led to the fact that we had auctions that failed and projects that did not materialize. Now, the good thing is that we have learned a lot of lessons. And we have started applying the lessons that we've learned, notably with the fact that we have moved on the regulatory frameworks from designs that were on negative bidding towards stable two-sided CFDs, so again, to make the projects very bankable. We have also learned that we need to index the CFDs to inflation in order to be able to acknowledge what is happening on the market and the business for everybody else. And we have worked also quite a lot on expanding the supply chain, which is maybe an aspect that didn't come across in the previous panel, but expanding the supply chain for all of these projects that we need to build. So today we have 39 gigawatts of offshore wind, which is already in the ground in the sea in Europe, and that will grow to 79, according to our projections by 2030. So indeed, a lot of things have been happening, a lot of things have been moving. One particular aspect that is important, and I think we need to touch base maybe as we go along also on this panel, we see a lot of movement in the North Seas, okay? Just this February, 9 countries in the North Seas, they signed a huge understanding, a huge declaration on how we're going to move forward with the offshore ambition in the North Seas, which is now saying that we will have to deploy 15 gigawatts every year between 2031 and 2040 of offshore wind in these countries. So we have blueprints, we have experience that can be used, that can be looked at, and that can also serve to fit the Baltic region. And I think it's important to know that it is doable, and we need to do it.
But exactly, let's go back on that topic. You, as a European industry representative, do you see that there is a room for Baltic Sea and the Baltic states for offshore?
Absolutely, I do. Because, and this is where we started the discussion this morning, we are also in a very different security context, and we need to understand wind energy, onshore and offshore. This is about our own security. So we need to make sure that we deploy as much as possible in our seas, and this is also about our economic resilience. The benefits will outweigh the costs. The benefits will outweigh any doubt that we might have, and this is the reason why we are in different stages of development. I'm not saying that we can copy-paste what is happening in the North Sea, in the Baltic Sea, but I'm saying we have sufficient experience, sufficient lessons learned that can be discussed and that can serve to kickstart the market here as well.
Piotr, I know you have been also working for the ministry, so and now as an association representative. Maybe you can share your views, how those things can happen and really make the FIDs happen in the countries where nothing was done before.
Yes, thank you for that. I will be more than happy to share our experience. But before I start with the offshore wind, maybe let me go back a few years earlier, because Poland was one of the very first countries that introduced CFD contracts for renewable as such, for onshore renewables, let's call them like that. It was 2016. That means that we started discussion in 2013, 14, 15, how that should look like. And in those times, electricity prices in Poland was very, very cheap. It was like 30 to 40 euros per megawatt hour. And onshore wind was like 80 euros per megawatt hour. So everybody expected that government will have to pay a lot of money for development of renewables in Poland. But what happened? First tender for onshore wind took place in 2018, and the prices were like 40, 50, 60 euros per megawatt hour. In the same time, electricity prices from coal in Poland went up also significantly. So the prices were quite the same from onshore and from coal. And today, coal prices are more than 100 euros. And those prices from CFD contract stayed at this 40, 50 or 60 euros, which means that nowadays onshore wind farms are paying a lot to the system. They are not off-takers. They pay billions of zlotys to the system in their lifetime. So we don't have, when we are thinking about system, support system, we should look in the long term, not what's happening today. Future is blur. We don't know what will happen. But we need to be prepared for everything. In terms of offshore wind, it was quite the same. We started discussion about the support system in 2019, where the prices were also much lower than today. And we expect that we will pay a lot of money for offshore wind. And of course, many things has changed since then. We have COVID, we have Russian aggression on Ukraine, which means that the cost, what Pavel mentioned before, the cost rose significantly in offshore wind as well. So the key was here to be consistent in what we are doing. That's the first thing. And very flexible approach of government, because government perceive offshore wind not only from the perspective of electricity prices, but the broader aspect of economy development. What Minister said earlier today, that we should look at the economy as such. We see that our projects are developing our economy, and this is very important. It's not just about electricity prices. It's not just about environment or climate change. No, it's about economy. And I think that today, this is a very accurate slogan of Bill Clinton from his first campaign, presidential campaign. It's economy stupid. This is the very first thing that you would look at.
Super. Thank you for that. Airidas, we will come to you. And I think that today it has been a good day for you, because Lithuania has been mentioned always as a forerunner, the success story of renewables. How you see this journey of the offshore, from your side, because there have been some hiccups.
Yes, indeed. So at first it was good to hear that previous panelists and market participants were so optimistic about offshore wind development. So I think it is a pretty good sign for us, for policymakers, that more investors, more companies can come into Baltic region and develop offshore wind projects. So speaking from Lithuania's perspective, I think that we can highlight three important things in our story of offshore wind. So first of all, we managed to approve in our strategic documents, for instance, our national energy independence strategy, that offshore wind is one of the top priorities of renewable energy development in our country. So among onshore generation, we also see offshore as potential for further development, and we see advantages what offshore can give compared to onshore generation. And good example was this winter, last winter, when we had high prices of electricity, and I believe that if we could have offshore generation during those periods, we could have lower prices of electricity. We can have electricity when we have Dunkelflaute effect in onshore region. And I think it is very important from policymaker position to have offshore wind in strategic documents. And of course, we had the processes of 2 offshore wind projects. So as you know, one project is already conducted and we have winner for it. Maybe one special feature of this tender was that it was conducted with no support scheme from the state side, and it doesn't have any risk management mechanisms. So we see that there are some challenges to go forward with this project on commercial basis, but we will see what will happen in the future with this project. And of course, second tender last year was not so successful, and probably the main reason was the conditions of the tender. We saw experience from Poland, from other regions, that in current market conditions and current situation, we need to offer more for developers to come to our region and develop offshore wind projects. But of course, for us as a policymakers, we have to balance between 2 or even 3 interest groups, stakeholders. We don't want to overpay for this project. We want to have good balance among developers and final consumers, who in the end of the day will pay for this project. But if we want to go forward and if we want to initiate the tender again, I think we have to review the conditions and offer better conditions.
But exactly, this is super good, strong message, I would say, for the industry. As you heard also that there is many people who want to support you. So if you have something we can do, please do share. Just keep in mind there is from Netherlands, Norway, Denmark, you know, all other countries, so we are happy to support. Is there anything what we can do it now, or you will think about it and come back to it a little bit later?
Yeah, I mean, if Lithuania, not if, but maybe when Lithuania will move forward with the second tender, I think that we as a ministry will initiate public consultations. We will try to get as much feedback as possible from market participants. Of course, before the tender next year, we had lots of discussions with many of different companies, and we can promise that we will get back to you and discuss all the conditions of a tender. So I think that when will be the right time to discuss it. And of course, from European Union perspective, from European Commission perspective, to initiate new tender, we need to get new approval from European Commission to get permission to give a state aid for a developer. So probably the hardest part will be to get approval of European Commission and get new clearance on state aid scheme.
Super. If the EU is only obstacle, then I think we can make it work. Edijs, you have been working with Elwind projects, I think almost from the beginning, almost, if I'm kind of remembering correctly, you know, almost. And Latvia have been always a little bit more quieter or less ambitious about offshore in the, you know, making it happen faster, or, you know, there is only the one project in the pipeline at the moment. How you see the offshore, and will the Elwind really happen?
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. So, first of all, I would like to thank the previous phase of the panel, which was quite optimistical from an industrial perspective. So I think that's a good point for us, that we as policymakers should do our homeworks, just to be in the place when the industry wants to come to our market and wants to be ready. So from Latvian side, I would say that...
Edijs, sorry, we are already here and we are ready.
Yeah, and if we talk about the ambitious, so I would say we are maybe not less ambitious. I think we are quite realistic and pragmatic ones. I would expect so currently. And I already told it in the morning, so, and already in the breakfast I told that actually at some point we will go to the offshore, but actually that is not our self-target to be there just to tick the box that we are somewhere in the offshore. I think if we want to go to the offshore, the preconditions should fulfill. So I think we need to see that the system needs is needed from the energy systems needs. So then we can address with the offshore wind. What we are doing here, and I think Elwind, and indeed I'm almost from the beginning of the Elwind. So, and I think Elwind is the project what I really I would say it's a really nice joint cooperation project, which shows that we can do it for. And I think the Elwind project in Latvia is one and only currently, and I think it will be one and only, because there is no other project development in the Latvia. And just to manage expectations also about Zelwind, and I really appreciate this optimism that we need to go faster and faster. So, but actually from Zelwind perspective, I think we are currently doing in the following phase that we will be ready with our assessments with the EIA closer to the 2030. We expect it 2029. There will be the final report that whether this area is ready or not. And I would read this current situation with early development stage as an investment in the future. And then actually the state will be ready at the time when the business is here and the conditions are right. And I really like the words what Pavel mentioned. And if the offshore can address the system needs. And at that time, actually, we will be ready to put it out from the auction. And I think we would be done our homework.
But maybe for both deputy ministers, do you see that the Baltics are competing between each other, or actually we are collaborating with each other? Edijs, you start, and then Airidas can comment.
Yeah, I can start as a civil servant. What I can say, I would say, is diplomatically, politely. So, of course, we are cooperating as much as we can, but just maybe go a little bit deeper on this topic. I would say we are both. We are competitors and we are partners. I think what we can say from the partner side, and I think all the infrastructure projects and what has been done so far, I think we are real partners. We have a really good cooperation in the Baltic region. But to be frankly speaking, if we are talking about the investments, of course we are competing. So, and that's actually the reality. We are competing, we are trying to attract the same investors in each of country. So of course we can say we are partners, we want to make it together, but anyway, somewhere in our gut feeling, we are trying to get investments to our country. So in that case, we are competing in some sense. And I would say the simple answer is we are both. We are competitors from one side, and also we are quite a good partners from another side.
Airidas.
Yes, I think I totally agree with what was said, and of course, we as a Baltics, all three countries have common goals, common targets, and we build out common projects as a region. But of course, when we speak about concrete projects, when we attract foreign investments, which could participate in our market under market conditions, we of course see each other as competitors, because each country wants to have direct investments in country, and I think both, maybe all three countries are doing well compared to other regions of Europe. I think we are doing pretty well, but from offshore project side, we don't have any discussions on building a project together with all three countries. But who knows? Maybe in the future, the best concept will be all Baltic states go together and build out offshore wind project. I'm not saying we are going to do it in the upcoming years, but with such fast changing conditions in the market and what we have all around the world, maybe we need new perception of a market and maybe more collaboration in such projects of three countries.
Viktoriya, why the investors should believe in the Baltic markets now?
As I mentioned earlier, I think we are just really in a very different political context. And I think there is great potential in the Baltic Sea. And what we just need to do right now is, echoing what was previously said, and I fully agree with that, having the one voice. We need from you to hear this one voice. How do you situate yourself on the offshore ambition? How do you map it out as a region together? And how we can also help you to achieve the goals that you have. I think this is extremely important. And we also need to bring together all the stakeholders in one place to discuss how this will happen, not just with the governments, but governments, industry, policymakers, TSOs, all in one place to map it out and agree on our common vision. This is what is needed, and this is what will unlock the potential, I think, in the Baltic region. So I see it more from a cooperation perspective rather than a competition perspective.
Guys, do you believe that we haven't done it?
I think we have done it in partly, but of course you can always done it better. So I think we as a Baltics region are a good example how regional cooperation should be done. Of course there may be some gaps, and I think I agree that at some point we can come to discuss maybe some broader perspective. But in general, I think ambitious in all Baltic states are there. So I think the challenge currently, I would say, at least from Latvian perspective, and I already shared it, that I think we need to work on the demand side. There is not stories that just to build the megawatts or gigawatts of the generation capacities, no one is using them. So otherwise, we need to look on the combination if there is some demand, so we can go and look also how can we cover our needs. And I think this should go hand in hand with the demand and the supply, otherwise it will not work out. And currently, just to frankly speaking, if you look from the current perspective, if you look, for example, 1 gigawatt project offshore, for example, in Latvia, there is no need in the system for such a big generation capacities. But you never know what will happen after 5, 10 years or 15 years. So I think that is the way how we are thinking, that we are preparing all these areas, preparing all these potentials for the future needs. And then it's actually on our side and our homeworks what we need to do as a policymakers, how to attract more demand side here. And if demand will come, and also the generation within afterwards will come here in as well.
Yes, maybe just one more thought to add. We, together with Latvia, already building out ideas how to increase not only demand for internal consumption in Lithuania and Latvia, but also on interconnectors to other markets. So, for instance, cable to Germany from Latvia or Lithuania will be a huge enabler for renewable energy developers, because 2 gigawatts of interconnector is a huge amount of electricity can be transmitted. So we already building out Harmony Link. We will increase our interconnection with Latvia in the upcoming decade. We opened our commercial line between Lithuania and Poland, Litpolink, and increased commercial capacity. So we have to think about internal demand, we have to think about electrification, about attracting new investments, but about also how to become energy and electricity exporters.
Piotr, do you see Baltics as a competitors to Poland?
Well, let me just say that, of course, because we are discussing offshore wind and whether it will happen in Baltic states or not, I may say this way, that don't underestimate small countries and small economies. If we think about when modern wind technology was born in Denmark, 5 million inhabitants, if we summarize potential of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, we have more than that. Of course, we are talking about 3 different states with 3 different economies, but with very strong historical ties. So I think that also in that element, we can deliver offshore wind. In that kind of countries, we can deliver offshore wind. Denmark has already a lot of offshore wind, more than you plan even in your 3 countries. So the most important thing is that you should know what you want to achieve and go straight forward. And you will achieve it. You will achieve it. I'm super optimistic that we will have gigawatts in Baltic states. I don't know whether you will have one tender for all your 3 countries, or each and every country will go separate path. But I'm sure that you will be succeeded, because offshore wind is reliable technology, mature technology, and while discussing the costs, because I know that this is always about the costs, we should also be aware that LCOE is something different than the market price. And if we look at how the prices are going each and every day, totally different way, during the day, during the night, we will see that it's not always about the LCOE cost. So just to encourage my colleagues from the Baltic states, we in Poland was very straightforward. We went straight line, although there was many different situation that we haven't expected and foreseen, like COVID, like war in Ukraine, which pose a major threat for the project. But our politicians said, okay, we are going straight for the offshore because we see what we can gain for our economy. And if we look at renewables as such, why should we waste our money, burning our money in coal or gas power plants, instead of investing those money in our economies? Why should we send our money to US, to Gulf, to Colombia, Australia, South Africa to buy energy carriers? Instead of that, let's invest in our countries. And those money brings more revenues for the economy, for our budgets, and our economy will grow. Even if the electricity might be slightly more expensive than if we do it onshore only, or photovoltaics only. So.
Super. Final question. I know we are almost finishing, but to everybody. We are sitting here, I don't want to say 7 years from now, but let's say 10, because then most probably we all are feeling a little bit more comfortable to answer those questions. And there is no offshore wind parks in the Baltic Sea, in the Baltic states. What went wrong? Viktoriya, Piotr, then Edijs and Airidas.
Well, if I may start, don't worry. Time flies. Like I said, we start our discussion about support scheme in 2019, offshore support scheme. And it was like, just like that. Last year we had a first tender in December, after 5 years, in the 5th anniversary of supporting scheme. We have a tender. While we're discussing in 2019, we thought, oh my God, 2025 it will be, in different times. But time flies. Just do what you want to do what you need to do, and you will have offshore wind. If not 7 years, let's be 10. Okay, but you will have it.
Super. Viktoriya, do you have maybe also guidance for the Baltic or regional collaboration or CFT? Just asking.
The only scenario I see for this not working is if aliens invade the Earth. So your scenario is not a plausible one. No, I don't believe in that. No, but really, as I mentioned previously, we just need to walk the talk, and I think this was also said beforehand. The statements are there, the ambition is there. How we sit on one table and map it out is what we need to do, and it will happen. I don't believe that it cannot happen.
And I have 3 simple messages on this one. So don't go crazy, be realistic, and whenever demand will come, offshore will be.
Wow. Airidas?
Well, I also think that we should be optimistic about the offshore wind in 10-year perspective, and probably the main challenge could be the changes all around the world. I mean, the changes of supply chains, maybe geopolitical risks in the world, but I think it was good to say that we just need to clarify our target and clear timeline and move forward with needed themes to make it happen.
Thank you, guys. We are a little bit over time, but I thought that this last briefing was also needed. So there is hope. I think the industry is super hopeful. I think ministry and policy side, we are also seeing progress. So now we only have to get it out. Is somebody brave enough to do the first CFT, and then everything else will come. Thank you, guys.